Hey, what's up, people? It is Reaperator here, and today I wanted to talk about the Community movie. It has been confirmed that it is finally happening, and I'm excited, but also very skeptical because I'm kind of worried that this movie will be a flop. So let's get into it. Now, first and foremost, I'm really hoping that this movie isn't a flop and it's really good. I've been a fan of Community since like season 5 was currently airing. I got into it while season 5 was airing. So I think that was in 2012. So I've been a fan for over a decade. So needless to say, I'm really hoping this does good. I don't want to see it too bad. But there's a lot of things that have me worried, and especially the time gap between the end of season 6 and now. Assuming that this movie comes out in 2023, they have not released when it's going to come out yet. They haven't told us. But my assumption is that it'll be this year in 2023. Now, looking on the bright side to start out, first of all, Dan Harmon will be writing and executive producing this movie. I'm very glad that's the case because Dan Harmon is the one who created these characters. He based the plot and setting of the show off of his own real world experience at his community college. So this show is very tailored towards him. I mean, we saw what happened in season 4 when they took Dan Harmon off the project. It didn't work and it was just a bad season overall. And I'm very glad that in the movie, they'll be using him as the writer and executive producer. And that means, without a doubt, it'll be at least somewhat good. Another thing that's got me excited is Dan Harmon has already said that they're not doing a paintball episode. And I'm glad because, as much as I love the paintball episodes, something Dan Harmon said, and I agree with, is that it would never really capture the essence and the feel of the original paintball episode. It's not going to be the same. So I'm glad that they're not resorting to that because if they did, it kind of would have felt like a cheap trick. Another thing that he said he's not going to go down plot wise is they're not going to be saving the school. That's the plot line they kind of used in season 6 and I think as well as season 5. But season 6 kind of ended with them finally doing everything they needed to do to save the school. So to revisit that kind of plot line would have also felt kind of lame because one, it kind of would undo and take away all the weight of seasons 5 and 6, and two, it's just the plot line's been done before. There's not really much you can get out of it, so I'm glad that that's not the reason they're returning. Dan Harmon also has not released the reason why they are returning. He said he's leaving it up in the air, and I guess we'll just have to wait for it to come out to see what it's going to be about. Now, I wanted to get into some of the reasons why I think the show could flop. Now, as far as returning characters, so far, here is who is confirmed to come back. Joel McHale as Jeff, obviously. Gillian Jacobs as Britta, Allison Brie as Annie, Danny Pudi as Abed, Jim Rash as the Dean, Ken Jeong as Chang, and I believe that's all who's confirmed to come back at this current date. But he said that Donald Glover as Troy and Yvette Nicole Brown as Shirley is a maybe, and I'm really hoping they make it in because without the original dynamic, and obviously I'm leaving out Pierce, Pierce is canonically dead in the show's timeline. And admittedly, I know Pierce has faked his death many times throughout the show's run, but the episode where he actually died felt very real. It didn't feel like a trick. And if they did reveal that Pierce had been faking his death, I really feel like it would take the weight out of that episode. So I am glad that he's not coming back to the project, even though I loved Pierce's character in the show. The problem with the casting is that if they don't bring back Troy and Shirley, I feel like the show will feel empty as it did in seasons 5 and especially season 6. Now, I liked the additional cast they brought on, but it never felt the same as it originally did, and the show always just felt like a hollow shell of itself without the main cast. So, if they come back, then I think the movie will be great, but right now, as it's unconfirmed, I don't know. It's got me kind of skeptical, and I'm kind of in the air about if they don't come back, then, I mean, I'll probably watch it regardless, but it'll probably feel the same as season 6 did, where it felt more like a chore to watch it rather than an enjoyable TV experience. However, a caveat to that is Dan Harmon did say that Donald Glover and Yvette Nicole Brown could make appearances. It's just that they haven't signed any contracts, so he can't say for sure that they'll return. But what he said is that they will probably come back. Now, I'm hoping that it's not just brief little cameos and they're in it from beginning to start, because without them, again, it'll just feel so empty. And Troy really is the heart of the show. That's something Dan Harmon has said himself. So especially with the Troy and Abed dynamic. That was like my favorite part of the entire show. Abed's like my favorite character, and I like all the meta jokes he does, but it was always nice for him to have someone normal like Troy to kind of bounce off of. And their on screen chemistry was unmatched in anything we've seen out of any sitcom ever. Some of the things I would be most curious about seeing out of this movie if Troy did come back was A, what he's been doing all this time. Possibly they could bring LeVar Burton back because at the end of Troy's episode in season 5, he and LeVar Burton left on a boat. So I think it'd be really funny to see those two come back and kind of see what they've been up to. And you could do a lot of character growth for Troy and kind of have him mature a bit. That would be cool. And also just to see what all the other characters have been doing. I mean, at the end of season 6, Annie left to go do something with the FBI. Abed left to go do something with like a TV show he was creating. And I'd really like to see the then and now of how those characters have changed since the last time we've seen them. I think that'd be really cool to explore. And I also feel like if they didn't do something like that, it would just feel really awkward because obviously we've had 10 years in real time, over 10 years, I believe, since the show had ended. So to have those characters be the exact same would just be a letdown. And I am hoping that also we do get to see some of the characters they introduced in season 6 return. Now, I don't think it would be the end of the world if we didn't, but I think it'd be cool to see what Frankie and whatever Keith David's character, Elroy, that was his name, what Frankie and Elroy have been up to, as well as how they click into the dynamic of the group when they have the old people back. Once again, that's assuming that Troy and Shirley do return, but even if they don't, just to see those characters come back with Elroy and Frankie, I really like those two characters. I hated Buzz Hickey, but those two characters I would like to see back. I really liked what Keith David brought to the table when he portrayed Elroy, and I think he was one of the highlights of season 6. But again, it wouldn't be the end of the world if we don't see his or Frankie's character return. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the plot of the movie. What will it be about? Obviously, it can be about anything. The show was no stranger to doing wacky and zany things, but that was when the group was all together. The end of season 6 saw that the group kind of broke apart, and you don't really know who stays at Greendale and who doesn't. I mean, you know for sure that Annie and Abed left, but as for the rest, it kind of left it up in the air. So I don't know where they could drive the plot anymore from where they left off at. I thought Community left itself off on a really high note. It kind of felt really grounded and more realistic than most TV shows do. Most TV shows always give you the happy ending. All the characters are going to do great things in their lives. And this one did half that and half not. Because Jeff seemed like he really didn't want to let go of the group. And he was very worried about his future and how it fits in. And the study group is obviously broken apart. And Jeff seemed to take it the hardest, right? Because Jeff had been this selfish guy. And as the show progressed, we see him start to become a better person and really attach to this group and make his friends and really just change. It was a complete 180 for his character. And now he has to give all that up. So it would be interesting to see how Jeff's doing through all this. Also, the reason for the characters returning could just be for a brief little reunion. So I'd be interesting to see how Jeff reacts to that, knowing that he's got all of his friends back, but only for a brief time, because everybody has to go back to their jobs at the end of the day. I'm hoping that they do it in a really cool way, because Community was no stranger to playing with like real world emotions, but with the characters that they've created. That's what made the show so good, is even when they're doing the craziest stuff in the world, there was always that real life emotion put into the writing. So I'm very curious to see what they'll do. They haven't released any details about what the script will be about, but if it's something cheap, which I'm counting on Dan Harmon to not make it that, but if it is, this whole movie could flop regardless if they bring the characters back or not. But with that being said, I'm going to end the video here. This is obviously just all speculation at this point. I'm kind of talking about the things that I'm worried about given the information that we've been given. Now, if they give us more information, I'd be happy to make an update video in the future and kind of talk about it. You guys know when the movie actually comes out, I'll be reviewing it. So I'll also make a video for that, and possibly if we get new information, I can make a kind of update to this video in the meantime while we wait for it to come out. I'm excited, but I'm also very skeptical about this movie. I'm hoping it does good, but there's always that chance that it doesn't. And given that we've waited so long, I feel like everybody's expectations are going to be super high, And I'm trying to mitigate those the best I can because I want it to be amazing. I want it to be a movie that's been worth waiting for over a decade. But at the same time, the way that the show was going in its final season, I'm glad that they ended it when they did. If they did try to prolong it and make a seventh season, I think it would have been terrible. I'm very glad they cut it off early. And honestly, I think the show could have done without a sixth season and just ended it at 5. But that's a topic for a different day. But let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. Are you guys excited for the movie? Are you skeptical like I am? Do you guys even care about the movie? Let me know. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.